Welcome to The Explainer. What if the biggest decisions affecting your life weren't actually made by people, but by code? Today, we are digging into a fascinating blueprint, a real roadmap designed to help us reclaim our digital power and finally make those hidden systems accountable.
All right, let's start with this quote because it really gets to the heart of the matter. For most of history, power had an address, right? You could literally point to it: parliaments, courthouses, places with flags and marble steps. But today, well, the most important decisions are being made by systems. The real levers of control have moved. They're tucked away on servers, buried in lines of code that dictate what you see, what you're allowed to say, and maybe even what you think is true. So you can think of it like this. Power used to be visible. You had parliaments, laws, public debates. You could see it happening. Now, so much of it is invisible. It's embedded in the architecture of the platforms we use every day, in the logic of the algorithms. It's almost like a soft law that governs us by quietly structuring our choices, curating our reality. And it does all this without a single vote, without any public hearing. It just happens. Okay, but here's the twist. What if this massive, invisible machine isn't nearly as all-powerful as it seems? What if its greatest strengths are also its most profound weaknesses? And this right here, this is the system's Achilles heel. I mean, think about it. The system is incredibly strong where it can automate things, where it can operate at a massive, inhuman scale. But it is weak where it has to rely on trust. It has this secret dependency, you see? It can't just run on code alone, it needs us. And this is exactly where our power comes from. These systems, they need us to play along. They need our coordination, our trust, our cooperation, and maybe most importantly, they need our authentic data to feed the algorithms and make predictions. Without our willing participation, the whole machine just grinds to a halt. That right there is our point of leverage. So, if the system has these weak points, these dependencies on us, how do we actually use them? Well, that brings us to the blueprint itself. And this isn't about smashing the machine. It's a deliberate, phased roadmap for re-architecting our digital world. Think of it less like a revolution and more like a careful, strategic redesign. So the big question this blueprint is trying to answer isn't, how do we burn it all down? It's something much smarter. It's how do we make power contestable again? How do we introduce just enough friction? How do we break those feedback loops that just keep concentrating power in fewer and fewer hands? And maybe the biggest one, how do you make an algorithm accountable? And the plan unfolds over these 5 overlapping phases. They're designed to build on one another, step by step. It all starts with a really simple but powerful idea. You have to make the invisible power visible. Once you can see it, you move to restoring our ability to actually leave these systems. Then you start breaking up the information monopolies, you work on reinstitutionalizing democracy for the digital age, and finally, you get to a place where saying no, refusing to participate, is a normal, respected civic act. Okay, let's break this down a bit, because the logic here is absolutely key. Each phase you see here is a direct answer to a core failure of the current system. So, phase I, make power visible, tackles the fact that power is opaque and deniable. Its goal is just to make it legible. Phase 2, restore exit, is all about the fact that it's just too hard to leave these platforms. So the goal is to make exiting cheaper than complying. Phase 3, fracture epistemic monopolies, goes after the big one, when a single system gets to define what's true. The goal is to make sure no one system can define reality for everyone. And then you see how phases 4 and 5 build on that foundation. First to reinstitutionalize democracy, and then to normalize refusal, to make sure our participation is always, always a choice. Okay, so this is all great in theory, right? But how do we get from a blueprint on a slide to an actual new reality? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. Let's look at some of the actual tools proposed to make this happen. These aren't just vague ideas. They're concrete designs for a whole new digital toolkit. First up, let's look at a tool from Phase I. It's called the Public Square Index. And its job is simple: to shine a massive floodlight on the black box of algorithms. So instead of us just endlessly debating whether platforms are biased, this tool is designed to give us the actual data so we can see for ourselves. And the clever part is, it works just by observing these systems from the outside. And here's how it would work. By basically sampling public data, it can start to show us things like, hey, how often is this type of content being downranked? Or what kinds of topics are being suppressed on this platform versus another? The most brilliant part? It doesn't need permission from the tech companies to do it. It just watches. And that completely pulls the rug out from under the whole "just trust us, our algorithm is fair" argument. All right, moving on to phase 2, which is all about restoring our ability to leave. One of the key tools for that is something called a sovereign ID wallet. See, the core problem it's trying to solve is that right now our digital identities are basically trapped inside these platforms. It's like your data and reputation are being held hostage, which makes it incredibly hard to just pick up and go somewhere else.
So how does it work? Well, using some clever cryptography, this wallet would let you prove specific things about yourself, like, yep, I'm over 18, or nope, I'm not a bot, without having to reveal who you are. The bouncer analogy is perfect. You show your ID to prove you're old enough to get in, but the bouncer doesn't get to copy down your name, your address, and everywhere you've been for the past month. The whole point is to decouple identity from surveillance. It restores trust without forcing us into total exposure. And that makes our choice to leave a platform a real choice again.
Now, let's look a bit further down the road to phase 3. Remember, the big goal here is to fracture these epistemic monopolies, to break the power of any single system to be the sole source of truth. And a really cool tool proposed for this is the Plural AI Marketplace. The idea is simple. Instead of asking one AI for one authoritative answer, this platform goes out and queries multiple AIs all at the same time. And get this, the most important part of what it shows you isn't where they all agree. It's where they disagree. It would literally say, here are 5 different ways to interpret your question, and here's why these models came to different conclusions. Suddenly, AI isn't an oracle handing down the answer. It becomes a tool that helps you think, a tool that sharpens your own judgment by showing you the contours of the debate. It turns disagreement from a bug into a feature.
So, after all these phases and all these tools, what's the endgame? What does a future where this blueprint has actually been built feel like? Well, it's not some perfect, slick, frictionless utopia. It's something much more realistic, and frankly, probably a lot more human.
And this, I think, is the most important takeaway of all. A future where power is genuinely contestable will probably feel less efficient. Yeah, it's going to be slower because real deliberation takes time. It's going to be noisier because more people are actually being heard. It won't be perfectly optimized for engagement or profit. But here's the thing. Those aren't bugs, they're not flaws. They are the essential features of a healthy, functioning, free society.
And that leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. Dystopia isn't some grand conspiracy we have to fight, it's just the path of least resistance. The slick, frictionless, perfectly optimized world, that's the default setting. That's what we get if we do nothing. Building a future where our freedom is actually durable, well, that requires a deliberate choice. It requires effort. So the real question isn't whether it's possible. The question is, are we going to choose the easy path, or are we going to start building?